Good evening, everybody. Welcome in Pakhuis de Zwijger. And this movie is a new innovation for us to open our evenings and to already ask you to be aware of that you can pay as you like. It's free here, but let's see. This is the 20th edition of a series which is titled New Democracy. And tonight we're going to focus on what happens after the experiment has been done, beyond the experiment. How can democratic initiatives, which started as an experiment, actually really innovate government? And the context of this program is that it's part of an e-democracy project, which is done by Netwerk Democratie, an organization here based in the Netherlands, the Waag Society, and the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relations. And that project, e-democracy project, strengthens the use of e-participation tools by Dutch governments. The aim is to choose, I think, 3 projects or tools which will be translated in Dutch and will be made available for municipalities here in the Netherlands to use for free? Yeah. For free? That's really pay as you like. Really Dutch to ask that. Is it free? Yeah, it is. Okay, and these municipalities can use these new innovative tools to actually enhance or improve the collaboration between citizens and government. And they will be made available in November, in the end of this year, at a conference hosted by VNG on democracy. Tonight we have a special guest from Madrid, and we're going to talk about one of the organizations, Decide, a tool as well, a free software platform that allows institutions and organizations to carry on participation with citizens. And we're going to talk about that. What is that platform all about? You will know in a short moment of time. And then we're going to talk in 2 rounds. First on the question, what can we learn from these experiments when they are really happening? I mean, how is long-term collaboration between citizens and governments going? What do we need to know or do to really improve or enhance or actually make that happen? And the second one is really related, but kind of a different question, but very important to answer in order to have true collaboration between citizens and government. And it's how is government going to innovate? I mean, that's really a necessary step, right, to make collaboration a very normal thing in governments. So that's 2 rounds. Well, we have about 2 hours, so somewhere like in the middle, after 1 hour, I will shift the conversation from the collaboration between citizens and governments to innovating governments. You'll know immediately. Let me check for who's in the room. I don't want to know who you are. Yeah, I do know who you are, of course, but it's not possible to ask every person individually who you are. But let me just check one thing. Who has been visiting New Democracy for more than one time? The series New Democracy. Okay, so we kind of begin to establish a bit of a fixed crowd, which is great. And most of you are new, which is also great because we want new audience and new people to talk. The idea of New Democracy is that the series that we really go into depth on the discussion on democracy. And we've talked about commons, we've talked about flat pack democracy, new forms of representative democracy, other forms of participative democracies, deliberative democracy. We've talked about a lot of new things in academics or in practice about democracy. And also in the format, it's that everybody is equal on the table, so they're just sitting there on the table. And the idea is that if you want to participate as an audience, you can. But it's not that I'm going to go to you and I'm going to ask you to pose a question. You're actually going to join the conversation. And that's why the mic is here. And I will put, I think, a mic there. You only want one? Oh, we only want one. You're not allowed to go to that side. No. So there's one mic to join the conversation. And you come here and I will immediately give you the floor. Or, well, somebody is allowed to to set a point after a sentence, can finish a sentence, and then we'll include you in the conversation. And as long as the topic you raised is on the table, you stay here. You just participate in the conversation. And then if you feel it's okay, you go back and you make room for the next person in the audience who really wants to participate in the conversation. Is that a clear order? Okay. Is that clear? Okay, then well, let's just start then, because we are very honored that we have kind of like on this floor a Spanish night, and it's nice because if you're interested in democracy, you really want to know what's happening in Spain at the moment, because Podemos really inspires many people in Europe to change politics. And in the room next to us, perhaps some people say, oh, I was supposed to be sitting there. Yeah, there's a documentary there on the mayor of Madrid, I think, huh? Or, yeah? Oh, Barcelona, not Madrid, sorry. Barcelona. And you can, if you think you want to know more about that, you can leave now and we watch the documentary. But it's fun, because there's Barcelona, and here we have our special guest. He is from Madrid. Miguel Arana Catania, who is from Decide Madrid. And I would like to ask him to start only with him on the table, and then sooner or later we're going to invite more people to the stage. So give Miguel a very warm Amsterdam welcome. Hi. You can sit there. Yeah. I will sit at the top of the table. That's not really necessary, but it's easier for me to see if there's somebody. Okay, Miguel. A citizen participation director of the Madrid City Council, actively involved in the 15M movement, and co-founder of Labo Demo, an organization dedicated to design, implement, and develop participation strategies and digital tools. Okay, so let's start for everybody, if some people will need a 101 on the political situation in Spain. So let's start with the 15M movement, okay, in which you're active. What's the 15M movement?
Okay, this is important because this is the root of everything that happened,
that's why we start
and
with
the strength
yes.
of it. In 2011, the Arab Spring started. We watched it from Spain really with emotion, and something that really surprised us a lot. And we were thinking, okay, these kind of things cannot happen in Spain. Political situation is terrible. It's never going to happen. People don't care about politics. Nobody's involved, whatever. And then we had one demonstration. People went out to the street with a motto that was calling for real democracy in Spain. Yeah. That is something that looks a bit strange because we are supposed to be a democracy. Yeah. But people were not to agree with this. We have demonstration, and some people after the demonstration.
How many people?
Thousands of people. It was not a
not
huge
really
demonstration,
big, but big enough
it looked
to
a bit
notice.
different because it was not organized by traditional organization. It was more something more self-organized.
Okay.
This is an important ingredient. Yes. After the demonstration, some people thinking in this idea that happened in Egypt in the Tahrir Square, that people were taking the square, said, okay, let's gonna try the Arab way. That is, it looks like it's working. Let's gonna sleep in the square. Let's make a camp like they are doing in Egypt, and try to do something new. Yeah. And then around 40 people slept that night in the square. Next day they stayed, and there were 300 people. Yeah. Grab it. And then next day it were like 20,000 people.
Really?
And then boom, it exploded. And it started a movement that was self-organized by common citizens. The people who stayed in the square, so instead they say, we are not going out from this square. We're going to just sit here, talk between us, and try to find something different to do because we have enough of the political situation. And the next day, that spread to all major cities in the country.
Yes.
So it started. And
unbelievable.
For
camping
a month,
with 40 people, and then
at the beginning, and then it exploded. And then for a month, people were sleeping in the squares, organizing through assemblies and organizing a new movement that just the day before, people were thinking like nobody cares about politics in Spain, and then everybody was there, and it was huge. And for 4 years, that movement kept alive with a lot of action, demonstration, a lot of energy trying to change the political situation.
Yes.
The governments didn't agree with it. They didn't change anything. They say like, nah, okay, we don't care about it. And 2 years ago, people say, okay, you are not changing the situation, so we are going to build new political parties, and we are going to get into the institution and change it by ourselves.
Yes.
So new political parties like Podemos appear, also citizen-made political parties.
Yes.
And we have the luck that in all the major cities, we won. So now all the major cities of Spain are governed by parties that 3 months before the election didn't exist.
Yeah.
Just people join together and say, okay, let's make a new party and let's gonna win and then change the thing.
Yes.
And now we are, for example, in the government in Madrid or Barcelona in the other room. And we are trying to implement this kind of new idea of politics that is people who should take the decision and control the institutions
Yes.
from inside. So this idea of Decide Madrid is the platform that we have for citizen participation,
Yeah.
for let people take
Okay, so
the
that's
decisions.
The first, very good. Thank you for making the bridge. So this is the 15M movement. So you decide only 6 years ago we have enough 40 people, 20,000 people. Then a few years later, politics, traditional politics or government didn't do anything with it, with this tension they clearly felt in society. You decided to make these political parties, organize them, and took part in elections. Won. Okay. And suddenly you're in power. Okay, we're now there, yeah, right? And then you of course decide we're going to do it differently. And I didn't know the function existed, but you decide of course then to create a platform or to create a participation mode within government. Explain to us what you did.
Yeah, the thing is, when we were in the squares from the very beginning, from the very first day when we were 1,000 of us together, we faced the problem of the organization of the movement. Yeah. If you are 100 people, you can just join together and let's talk and organize. But if you are 1,000 and 1,000, it's impossible. It's a problem of scale. So from the very beginning, we said, okay, we need digital tools to help organize this because otherwise it's going to be chaos. We didn't have the tools at that moment. We
and
tried.
Facebook wasn't enough.
Facebook didn't. Is not for this kind of things. It's just to share, and it's useful for that, but not to organize ideas, take decisions, have debates, nothing like that at all.
Exactly.
So we were experimenting with new tools and tools existing in other parts of the world, and most of the experiments failed. We didn't really manage. But we learned a lot of things during all these years, like the kind of tools or functionalities that work, the things that help the collective intelligence to work better, and the things that don't help, like Facebook. So when we arrived to the government, we said, okay, like for example, now we are in Madrid, we are a government for 3.2 million people, and we really had to let all these 3.2 million people take the decision. So it's the same kind of problem. So let's gonna try to use all the knowledge that we got and build a platform and let the people take decisions. Yeah,
and that platform became Decide.
Decide, yeah. Decide Madrid is how we call it in Madrid. The software is called Consul. And we did it very fast, and it also spread very fast to other cities because they were facing the same problem.
Of course.
So now there are more than 40 governments that are using the same platform. It's quite universal.
Open source, so you
free software, so free for everybody. Everybody can use it, modify it, and as they want. And they are using it in Madrid, but also in Spain, but also outside Spain. For example, Buenos Aires is using it now for the participatory budget. In Paris, in Peru, in Colombia, it's expanding because it's a universal problem. It's not something that we have in Spain because it's some specific situation. The problem of the need of different democracy, something that is spreading.
Really?
After the Arab Spring, there was this movement in Spain, but some months after, there were a huge movement in Israel, and then one in Turkey, then in Brazil, and in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So it's some months, there is a new country with something very similar. Maybe the reason of the trigger is different, but at the end, what you see is very similar. It's common people, self-organized, absolutely horizontal, trying to take the control of their society. Yeah. Maybe the trigger is a problem with housing or with a student thing or whatever, but at the end, what they ask always is like real democracy, is take the control of what is around us.
We we want to decide for ourselves
Yeah.
how we live our
Yeah.
lives and what collective decisions we are
Yeah.
making together, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you for this introduction. Is there anybody who says, I need to pose a question to Miguel before we can continue? This was just the introduction. One question? Oh yeah, please. And introduce yourself, please.
I'm Mike Brandjes from the K-buurt in the Belmer, and we're starting something
Yes.
still similar. And what we're facing is the civil servants, because you say you're going to do it differently as politicians, but then there's that enormous apparatus. That's like a bucket behind the boat.
Yeah.
What did you do with that?
Yes. The bucket behind the boat. You are yourself now a civil servant. You're the director of
Not really
participation.
civil servant. It's another kind of position, but yeah.
You're not in the government.
No, but it's not civil servant. It's like a political position.
Oh.
It's a bit different, but yeah. Actually, for us, that was not really a problem because when we entered into the government, most of the civil servants were really happy that finally they can do something different, and the people that believe in what they are doing are in the government. So it was a bit the opposite. Now, some of them are now working as with a joy, and never happened. And also the situation inside the government.
Mike, can you go back to the mic?
Yeah.
It helps talking.
The situation inside of the government we discovered was quite hierarchical. People were looking them like, over the shoulder. So they were treated like not in a nice way. So just putting common people into the government was for them like, wow, it's like we can talk. It's not forbidden and these kind of things. And the thing is, for the most part of the process that we are starting, we have like a citizen initiative or participatory budget or things like this. The process happened outside the government. It's the people who make proposal, people who debate, people who vote, and then once the decision is taken, we execute the decision. So in some sense, it doesn't change a lot of things. The difference is not the mayor who make the order, it's the citizens.
Yeah.
But once the order is set and the decision doesn't matter if it comes outside or inside,
They have to
it's
execute.
executed in the same way that it was done before. So we don't really need to change so many things to make it work.
What? Because he says again, if a true civil servant will execute whatever what is told to him, what he's supposed to do, if there is a legitimate decision made, right? Whether it's by a structure with a mayor or a structure with citizens. But what's your reality? Why did you bring this up? What are you facing?
The reality is we went to the streets. Our turning point is a nice square in our area. We want a community center, etc. So we went to the local city council and they essentially granted it, but lo and behold, the whole proposal went to the central city unchanged. So we went here to the Stopera. Every political party is for it. It's the local government. And lo and behold, everything comes back for execution locally, and we're back to square one. And it's just like nothing moves. And it's somehow that there is like a machine in the background running that seems to have its own autonomous ways.
Well, you don't have to answer it now, but you have raised a topic which will be the red thread of, I think, round one. How can you actually make collaboration between citizens and governments really sustainable and meaningful, right?
Right.
And so hopefully we'll address some of the things and of your situation. We'll check that out.
Great.
Give us an hour.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, one important thing related with this,
Yeah.
if you allow me, is that
Fine.
when we were going to reach the government, a lot of friends from other places that have similar situation told us, like, the machine of the government is going to eat you. You are not going to be able to do things. It's impossible, whatever. And we discovered that was not true at all. It's difficult because it's not designed to produce fast changes at all. It's very slow, and you have to put 1,000 more energy than what you would really need. But it's just a matter of the last layer, of the political will. If the politician, the mayor or the politician, agree on doing the things happen. So the things stop, like you are commenting in your case, because the political will in the top doesn't care about the thing, but it's because of that layer, not because of the civil servants.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
For us, was super clear.
Yeah.
So the analysis of your problem is he says political, and it's
Yeah.
not
It's
governmental
not,
in
yeah.
your
No,
execution.
it's
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
So we have, but So you said, okay, if you're 3.2 million citizens and you really want to have a meaningful conversation and actually really involve them in decision making, you need a new platform. That's what we created, and in Madrid it's Decide Madrid. And how is then the relationship? So how does it work? I have a proposal as a citizen. I bring that onto the platform, and then what happens? And what's the relation with the mayor of the executive order? How does the city council, for instance, come into place?
Yeah. Well, there is not only one way to interact with the platform. This is important because
many modalities.
For example, there is one that is the classical way of direct democracy, that is this like citizen initiative. You make proposal, people support your proposal, and when you reach some threshold, that in Madrid is, for example, the 1% of population, we go to a referendum.
Okay.
And we have a referendum, and if there are more people voting yes than no, we take it and we do it.
Yes.
It's just like an order of the mayor. Let's do this. Boom. That's it. But we have other channels so people can do other things. Like, for example, we have participatory budget.
Yes.
There is an amount of the budget. In that year is 100 million euros. And people,
how many? What's the percentage of the budget is that?
it's around 3% or something like this. We have 4,000 million euros, and this is 100. And people can make proposal up to this quantity, and then they vote, and then they select the proposal. And we take these ideas and we put it in the budget.
Yes.
Or we have another section for collaborative legislation. Now, all the new regulation of the city council are published in the website before are approved, and people can comment on them and say, like, I don't like this part, I don't like this, I would change this. So the idea is to open as many channels as we can to the decision that were traditionally taken just by politician and a group of advisors to be open.
Okay.
Like, for example, we had the redevelopment of one of the main squares. Usually this is just the councillor of urban planning. He said, like, let's gonna change, and this is the new square, and that's it. So we opened a citizen process, and then first was a group of citizens who decided questions about the new square. Like, for example, do you want to have more bike lanes or not? Do you want to have green or not, parking or not, whatever. That was decided by a group of citizens. Then people answered the questions, and they voted for parks, bike lane, whatever. For this, we did an international contest, and architects from all over the world sent squares that fulfill in these answers. Perfect. And then people voted for the answers. So at the end, the new square is something that people have participated in all the possible phases of. So this is the idea, to try to open all the corners of the government to make it, to let the people go inside.
Okay. And how many, for instance, in a square, in the example of the square, how many people from Madrid are participating in a process like that?
I think it was like 60,000 people.
60,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
It's a decision that usually were like 4 people taking the decision, councillor and 3 advisors. That's it.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I think it's an improvement.
And you think so? So you started your story in 2011, and then you said we took over government a few years ago. Now you are in place, and you have this platform, and you have already experiences, right? What is the general idea? I mean, do you see results? Are, for instance, people trusting government more? Do you?
Much more. Every time we make a new poll to check the trust on government and citizen participation and the way they look the government is every time better and better. But still we have to fight this thing, because even when we build like a citizen party that most of the people have never been in politics or anything around, the moment you step into the government, people say like, okay, now I'm not trusting you anymore, because now you're inside. Yes. Even when one day before they were supporting you, trying to...
No, the notion that politics always corrupts is really a thick...
Yeah, and the media and the opposition play also this card always. Like, the argument always is, you are like us. It's not we are better, it's like, you are like us. Don't try to look like you are different. Yeah. And it's a quite cynical and perspective.
Let's broaden the conversation. And we have 4 chairs.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah, but then you have to go.
Definitely.
All that this is not necessary. You don't have to get permission to go to the table. You could just go to the table. You're there, and I'm like, yes.
I love permission.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about the representative part of democracy. One of the big issues is now that people are not involved in politics,
People
But
are not
that means
sorry?
sometimes
Involved.
not involved in politics. People talk all the day of politics, but I don't feel represented. So you now have a platform and you have an idea, you say people vote for that. But very often that is a very selective group that votes. So I live, for instance, on purpose op Kanaaleiland in Utrecht. I'm in the wijkraad, the ruimtemakers, whatever kind of movements, and we create something special very often. However, all the people that vote, let's say, are relatively high educated people. So the Turkish, the Moroccan, Dutch people don't vote. So in your voting procedure, is there a necessity that for each group at least 10% has to vote?
Good question.
If not, it's not a good
Okay.
representative.
No, it's the opposite. This is direct democracy mechanism. It's not trying to be representative democracy. It's the opposite. People who want to participate. It's not pretending to be representative, because otherwise we would do polls, not the direct process. The thing that you want to solve this problem is by doing more processes. Like, for example, the first process we did, there were 50,000 people, the people who participated. The next one, it was 100,000. The next one, 200,000. So the only way to solve it is to keep doing process, and then people keep coming and
But then the
doing
question is,
better.
this is a point or a comment which is made a lot, a critique on participative democracy. That is the worry that some groups in society are not participating and that they are not heard. So their perspectives are not counted in the decision-making process.
Absolutely.
And
But
so that is of course your worry. And the question is,
I understand,
Well,
but the
it's not quite a
solution, the only solution for this,
Yeah.
the first time you do it, probably it's gonna be like this. A lot of voices are not gonna be part of it. But then if you keep doing it, it's gonna increase and increase and increase and increase. This is the only solution. I mean, from the very beginning, you cannot have all society. But if you check what comes out of direct democracy mechanism, what you see from direct democracy works from 100 years ago in many places, is that usually the majority, people who participate, or the people who are involved, really usually tend to care about the minorities that don't participate. Like, for example, I was commenting this morning, in the last participatory budget process that we did, the second most voted proposal that we had was to increase houses for women who suffer gender violence. It's not because women who suffer gender violence are the majority of the people who participated. It's because the people who participated care about these people. Or homeless, there was another proposal, or people with Alzheimer's disease. I mean, this is the common outcome through all studies of comparative direct democracy mechanisms. People care about the voices that are not directly participating.
okay. And then the question, of course, is, come. The question, of course, is, because you said it's just not the case, and the only way to solve it is to repeat the process again and again and again, and people will see the results from it, and it becomes more and more and more inclusive. But do people ever worry about the legitimacy of the decision made because it's not representative?
Some people, but the only alternative is not doing this and having the traditional representative democracy that is not
Failing.
representative at all.
Yes.
Because when we don't have this kind of direct democracy, we have only the political party system that we understand that is taking decisions that are not representative. It doesn't matter if in the election they voted 40% or 50%.
Yeah.
The decisions they take every day are not taking into account what people want. So it's
even less.
It's
you would
even
say.
less. So it's an improvement. I'm not saying that when you start this,
Okay.
it's perfect, because that would make no sense, but it's an improvement.
Yeah, I have a question about, good, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. About different levels of government. For, I don't know what it's like in Madrid, but here you have the central city and you have the deelraad, it's the boroughs who make decisions. If it's like that in Madrid too, with different levels, do you make an onderscheid, a difference between city issues and neighborhood issues? And if you do, who do you let vote for neighborhood issues?
We don't exactly have
What's
this.
the demos, of course?
Yeah.
Then the question: who is involved?
It's not exactly like this in Madrid, where there's like a regional government that is caring more about a bit outside. Inside Madrid, we have the districts. We have 21 districts, and we have some decision for who is voting the whole city, and some decision who we think the people who should take the decision are the district, and we let vote depending on where you are living. So if you live in the district, you can vote on that decision. If you are not living, you cannot vote. Or in some processes, like for example in the participatory budget, there was a vote for a proposal for districts, and what we made is you can choose one district. It doesn't need to be the one you are living, but you can choose one because maybe you're working in another district and you want to have impact on that. Sometimes we change it. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah. Last, and then we're going to make the table more complete, inclusive.
You go back to the origins of 50M to something outside Madrid or Spain. But as far as I remember, it was actually the other way around. It was actually very endogenous. It was the aftermath of the financial crisis, and it was, of course, the whole idea of democracy after the transition from the dictatorship to this idea of democracy of two parties in Spain. This is important to me because, of course, there was a lot of people already being organizing, like the Ocupas, already that has some politicizing processes that were very useful when the acampada happened. This is super relevant in today's political situation, where we see that there is a lot of people already really fed up.
And active in another way.
But of course, but it's about the alternatives that are being presented, like the alt-right, for example, in Germany, or here with the, what is it, the FFF, or the FFF, the Builders Party. So what is very interesting about what you're saying is that, yes, there is an experiment in which there is direct democracy, but for me, it's very interesting because it actually comes from before even the 15M. The grievances that people had, that is actually this model working, which in my understanding, when it comes to being imported into Colombia or Argentina, may not be necessarily working because the people that are participating are necessarily politicized already. So my question is, how do you see this very specific context in which this model is emerging in Spain versus
somewhere else where there's no...
It's maybe the same about democracy, of course, but the processes in which people may be participating are totally different.
After the movement started in Spain, we were connecting with all these other movements in Turkey, in Brazil, in Israel, and so. And what we thought and we felt is that we were really similar, the different movements. So, and if we are so similar, our strength comes from the same place, and we're trying to ask for the same things, probably has nothing really important to do with our local situation. Maybe we can think it's related with or dictatorship or crisis, whatever, but then it wouldn't be so universal, because then it would appear only in Spain, for example. So we think it's more universal, even when we tend to read it as, we always try to find the why it happened, what was the trigger. And the first thing that comes to your mind is always like this kind of thing, like crisis or political situation, whatever, but I think this is not the truth. And actually, related with this, with the people who were more involved in traditional politics, I tend to think that usually also this is not good to this kind of new movements. This is the kind of, let's say, activists. This tends to stop this kind of new movements, because this kind of new movement needs the strength of everybody. And for people to be able to join it in a very horizontal way, we should be really horizontal. I mean, my voice should count your voice the same. And when people who have a more strong background or idea on what we should do or whatever, other people tend to a bit go away, like saying like, okay, this is not my place. So I think it worked really good, this kind of movements, in places where they didn't have really a strong community of activists. And that was a bit the case of Madrid those days, where the activists were a bit like disappear, and people took a bit the place, but everybody.
My whole point is really about to what extent actually this direct democracy model can be imported when there is no a background of already like people participating or having a very specific grievance. Because in the case of Madrid, of course you knew what you didn't want. You may not know what you want, but you knew that you wanted the desalojos to stop. you knew you wanted the political class to go to jail because of the corruption scandals and all that stuff. So it's
There
easier.
was an agenda, you say. Is
Yes,
that what you mean?
There was already something that they didn't want and something that they aspired to, which
Yeah,
is
that's an
democracy in
agenda,
the
political
particular
agenda.
case. But my question was really about to what extent actually we need, is a very phenomenological question, to what extent actually we need the specific process to aspire to something like real democracy. Sometimes it's there, but sometimes it isn't. But by looking at what is going in Madrid may not be enough. That's
Okay. Thanks.
Great, sorry, with the agenda, I think people already have agendas everywhere. I mean, the
Yes.
only thing is we tend to think because they are not organized that they don't have it or they don't care or whatever.
Because it's not articulated.
Because
but
it's
it
not
does-
articulated. But once it starts, boom, it blow away and really appear, the agenda, and it's very clear always.
Yeah. So it's under the surface, but as soon as you give the opportunity to articulate it, it's
appear.
there immediately. It's funny because there was also in the preparation group. Are we just going to make? I'm going to invite the table first. You can join. Come to stand. But in the participation group, of course, we also had somebody from Iceland, and of course there was also a big political crisis there.
Maybe
Is he in the room? Is he in the room?
Iceland-
Is he
yeah.
in the room? Hi. I interviewed him on the table, but he is now a celebrity in the Netherlands because he was followed by a TV group. But the Iceland guy was here, and we somehow also in our head perhaps said, well, this lazy country which the Netherlands sometimes is. Sorry, guys. Is it bad enough here? You know, to come up with similar approaches like in Spain or in Iceland, where the political class really failed, you know. But you say the context is not the most important. That is hopeful.
Maybe in the Iceland case, it had a bit more effect. I think this is a bit different case of the rest, because then probably there was a huge shock. But we were thinking the same comparing with the Arab Spring. This is the thing. We were saying, of course it happens in Africa because they have dictatorship, this is horrible. But in Spain, it's not so terrible. Of course, we have crisis and everything, but, you know, compare is not so terrible. And then, boom, it appeared. And everybody in all the movements in all the countries told us exactly the same. Like, here it's impossible because, and you give a lot of reasons. And then it happens.
Yes. Okay. Stand there. Who are you? Who are you?
My name's David.
Hi, David. Okay, I'm going to invite the other people at the table because it's a nice conversation and I like that everybody wants to ask you a question, which is great, and they can continue doing it. But I'm going to invite other people to the table because that's really relevant. Paola Huiding is the Senior Project Leader Sustainability at Platform 31, but she's also the founder of Volpi Urbane, an international office for research, urbanism and architecture that aims to provide creative solutions to urban issues by collaboration. Thank you. Join me on the table. Give her a warm hand of welcome. Because you, of course, have experience in this citizen participation as well in other parts of the world. Yeah. Great that you're here.
Thank you.
And then we have Meluki. He's from us. He's from Kaderlampe. He is a political scientist, senior consultant at Movisie from the Netherlands, an institute for social development, a very famous Amsterdam city maker. A leading role in developing communities and open source online platforms, including participatory budget schemes. So let's hear from him. He was involved with the Dutch first experience of buurtbegroting. Please join us on table. Yes, Maluki. I'm gonna also immediately count in Matt Poelmans, who's the director of Citizen Vision and vice chairman of the Dutch Web Accessibility Foundation and citizen representative at Schiphol Airport Council. Give him a warm welcome. And then last but not least, Marianne de Kleermaker. She's the project director of Strengthening Innovation Capacity at the Digital Agenda 2020, which is a program of VNG, which is the combined organization of all municipalities in the Netherlands. Jan, welcome. Thank you for being here. Yes. So now my table is complete. I like that because it was a bit empty here. Didn't you think? We felt a bit alone.
Oh, you did well.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to have. It's nice to have a fuller table. So I'm gonna now give you the floor.
Okay.
And let's see if he needs to answer or my other guest.
Yeah. Okay. So as you can hear, I'm English. And And just to introduce myself, I'm currently finishing a master's thesis on participatory democracy, so very, very relevant to me.
You have been visiting this program.
No, but I did connect with Podemos when I was in
Podemos.
London,
Okay.
and they had a circle there, and I learned a lot about them, so that was great. My question is about the relationship between local democracy and national and even transnational issues, because I did a case study for my research in England, and it was started by the municipality, and one thing that really became clear was that they didn't want to talk about the big context like austerity, because they didn't have any control over that, and they didn't want citizens being upset about that, even though they were feeling those cuts on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
And
Scope.
the scope of the discussion.
Yes.
So my question to anyone is, how do you reconcile the very local nature of participatory democracy with these massive forces that can be quite disempowering in a way, because they are outside of our day-to-day scope?
Yes. So how do you decide on the scope? You can start.
For me, I would just try to repeat the same kind of processes at all levels. I mean, the same thing that we are doing at the local level could be done exactly the same and the same kind of tool and process at the regional level, at the national level, at the European level, or at any level. So it's just a matter of taking the power that is focused and concentrated in some hands and spreading it. But I don't think there is a real problem on doing it in other levels, the same as we are doing it at the local level.
Are you doing it because you say the site software is now in 40 cities in all over Spain and even internationally? But are you having national polls or national participatory processes?
No, not for the moment.
No.
We hope it's gonna
But
come.
it's not there yet.
No, they are more afraid of losing this power.
Who's they?
The national government.
Oh, yeah.
They are more afraid.
They haven't called you yet. Can you help us with the participatory? No.
But they will. You cannot stop these kind of things.
So that's the answer. The answer is, of course, it's possible. That's what he's saying. Do you agree? Let's go to the table.
Oh, I think everything is possible, but I think
Really?
yeah, always. If you don't believe everything's possible, you shouldn't start your day. No, but I kind of recognize what you say. It's sometimes really hard to start, and the bigger the issue, take climate change for any. It's something
That's
that we
just a bold example.
yeah, but it kind of translates very well to your feeling of disempowerment. It can feel really big, but know that climate change is only going to be countered if all the people here are going to change their ways. So it's maybe not even only a question of getting your national government to start using the tools, but it's also reformatting the issues into what you can do. And so maybe if you have an issue that's decided somewhere else, find the part that you can do something about with the people that want to talk about it, and start there. So that will be my advice to keep hope.
But he wants to change government, right? I mean,
Well, that was exactly in the case I studied. What the local government did is saying they wanted citizens to do more because the local government could afford to do less. So pick up your spades and get working, essentially. And unless you create activist citizens, doing what you can mean just forgiving the national government for all of their mistakes. So there is still a tension. I appreciate the optimistic.
If I may say a word,
how about starting?
I think the answer, like Miguel said, will come from the society. There was this big social mobilization for years. He has clearly stated he is not a civil servant. He has a kind of political situation. Yes. There is a political concept of the new citizenship in Madrid. There is a political will to implement this new concept of democracy, and it comes from the grassroots.
very good. Thank you, political scientists. Yes.
I would say that the new democracy starts at the local level, at the grassroots, and will go up to any level above. And global issues are local.
Perhaps I can say something about. I did research on the city statute in Brazil.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, very shortly because it's a huge.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah, really take your time. It's important.
In Brazil, participation is part of the law, so it's compulsive any system of decision that you have to take.
It's in the constitution, right?
It's a city constitution. It calls the city statute, and actually started in the 60s, when urbanization process in Brazil, they were getting very fast. So actually, due to the speed of urbanization, of actually not urbanization, due to the speed of the population to the cities, there were no any system actually to make the growth of the cities possible. There were no legislation, so there were no rules. Cities were getting a mess, so a group of architects, together with citizen organizations, they wrote a manifest. Well, then
Already
this
in the
all
60s.
in the 60s, because if you have to think Brazil, already in the 70s, 90% of the population were living in cities. It's a very actual issue, actually. Now, this whole process has to be held during 20 years due to the dictator. And when it was clear that the dictator was getting to the end, in around 84 to 86, citizens' organizations just take again the manifest and start to push the government, we need to do something. And at that point was a very clever decision of the government that decide actually to involve all different parts of the society, actually, entrepreneurs, societies of civilians, knowledge institutes, universities, I say, let's make together the new law for urban development in Brazil. So it took 13 years to make this law by means of participation, and the law safeguards the right of participation. When you have this law, you have then suddenly a system to make it possible that the law can be implemented. From then, they set up a ministry of the cities. And in Brazil, the 3 levels of government, you have the federal, the state, and the municipality. They are completely disconnected to each other. So once you have this law, the city statute, and with 23 instruments for development, it's quite interesting. It has been set up at the level of the federal government, but each city in Brazil has to write their own city statute. That means that they use this basic document, and because each city has other kind of problems, the city on the coast, they have to write their own in order to make the process of urbanization organized. And you are not allowed to do anything about urbanization process, for instance, a zoning plan, what we call in Netherlands bestemmingsplan. It has to be by means of participation from the beginning. We have 3% of the budget of the municipality has to be invested in projects that civilians actually present to the municipality. So this law, 10 years ago in Habitat 2, won a prize of innovation, because it's a law that allows the interaction between citizens and government. And last year, during the Habitat 3, the zoning plan of São Paulo, that is pretty much based on this instrument, won again a prize of innovation. So it is actually on the paper. Sometimes things go wrong there, but it's amazing how you can organize a whole system. Actually, they had to set up a whole system to make participation possible. And even the government had to improve its systems to make participation possible.
Okay, thank you. That is a very good example of how you institutionalize what we were talking about. I mean, one is taking over. Taking over. The other is institutionalized in law, right? And then you have the struggle of the citizen in the street, I would say. And then in what category would your buurtbegroting, participatory budgeting in the Netherlands fit?
Do you know, we are somewhere in 2012, and here is he, Jeroen van Spijk, the elderly, the man in power, at the neighborhood Amsterdam East. And Jeroen looks at us Esma Salama and I, Meluki Kadalamp, both Dutch citizen with a migrant background, and the elderly, it takes his chalk stick and he walks to the blackboard and he look at us and he asks, what do I have to write on this blackboard? What do you want to decide for Amsterdam East in the framework of our budget monitoring project? And this is a little story, but a real story that is exemplary of a way to connect with each other, government and citizen.
He really had an open question. What do you need as a citizen initiative to flourish in this neighborhood?
And he was ready to write it down.
Yes.
It was not anymore the elderly saying, we have decided to do this and that, what do you think about it? It was the elderly saying nothing, only asking, what do you want me, as an elected politician in power, to write it down that we are going to do?
Yes.
And this is the attitude. And this is the end point at this moment from a citizen-driven challenge in Amsterdam East, where we, as a group of citizens, have made clear that we wanted to be at the helm, to decide which kind of policy we wanted to be analyzed and to be submitted to budget monitoring.
Okay, and then so you were allowed to do the thing, and then Jeroen, the elected politician, went away. And what's the situation now?
When he went away, when he was there, we have a situation where, on the one hand, we have what I call a political opportunity structure. Let's say we have a structure of institution that made that our neighborhood, Amsterdam East, with an elected council, was powerful.
Yes.
130,000 inhabitants, a budget of 200 millions, and councillors and elderly in charge of this budget. The political, the institutional structure made us on the local level strong. On the other one, there was a structure of informal relationship with the citizen. You could speak with the elderly would go to the neighborhood to speak with people, and there was, let's say, a combination, a constellation of power that made that politicians were very open for citizen participation.
Yes.
The combination of the power constellation made that they wanted really, very sincerely and politically, they wanted to combine participatory democracy and representative democracy. Yes. And we were there in the neighborhood as challenging citizen group, being able to understand what the system wanted, the politicians, and being able to formulate the asks of the people. And at this moment, it produced budget monitoring. September 2013, the 8th, our open data visualization was online. And it was an innovation in the Netherlands. You could see where the money goes in the neighborhood. It was very important. 1 year later, everything was gone.
Yes.
Those politicians, two things, the political structure, the institutionalization of power changed. No more decentralized, powerful neighborhood, but centralization, all depending from the central city. Another culture, no more horizontal speaking with people. In Amsterdam, we had then 53 so-called responsible unity that are at this very time from top down deciding what is going what is happening everywhere. The political opportunity structure changed, and the culture change. People decided after the election of 2014 not to make budget monitoring a priority, and the challenge of citizens existed still. We tried to go on with budget monitoring, but without the structural means to do it. So there is hope. We have to wait for a new political landscape.
Yes, very good. I mean, it's really, you say, I didn't even need to take over. I didn't need a law because there was a political opportunity structure which made it possible. The relationship and the culture was there to actually really want to involve citizens. And that attitude was enough. We didn't need to take over. But suddenly, if the political structure then changes, you are back to square one. You have to go past the jail and you do not get any refunding. Yes, it's monopoly. And then we're going to go to you.
Hello. I've come to you for very concrete, practical advice. I'm half Amsterdammer, half Londoner. I was brought up in Spain and Brazil. So naturally, I'm interested in governance beyond national borders. How can I get my voice heard in places where I don't have a passport, but I have an interest? So, myself and a team, we built a tool for global governance using the internet. Now,
and the tool is named. Everybody's now going to go using their mobile computers and looking it up.
My digital identity.
My digital identity. Okay, continue.
I took it to the EU, and they were very positive. But they said, listen, if we propose this to the national governments, they'll leave the EU. So I went to the Dutch government. I thought, well, maybe the Dutch, they're, innovative, open, let's try it. I got chased out the room, you would not know how fast.
Okay. But this is interesting because this is a series which is called New Democracy. And I don't know, I do not know, even I've done all these talks, what does it mean if you say, I went to the EU and they were enthusiastic and they said, go away because our countries will leave the EU. And then you go to the Dutch government. There's somebody from the Dutch government in the audience. He said, immediately, I looked at him, he said, what's it? So the problem is, who from the Dutch government?
That is exactly my question. How do we approach these organizations in a way that is not threatening and a way that they see that, okay, they will lose power, but they will gain confidence through credible systems? So that is exactly my question. Who do I speak to? Yeah. And how?
Okay, let me make it a broader question because your sentence was really interesting. They are afraid. So the question, if these tools, if you say it starts at the local level, and then it rises to a scale, and then perhaps national or even international questions or participatory processes can exist. And then I said, is it already on national level? You said, no, they don't dare yet. And it's a bit the same as you. I mean, are institutions on national governments, or even in Amsterdam, are they willing to actually allow these initiatives to flourish because they're so afraid that it will, diminish their power or whatever the reason is? What is your idea about that?
For me, it would be a bad answer probably, because I would say that probably you can't do it. When I was outside the institution, I had the same feeling that when you're outside, they're not going to listen to you and they are going to perceive it as a problem, threat, for sure. Now, for example, we are in the government, we call to other governments and we tell them, like, we are doing this, it's perfect, it's great, we give you, it's free and so, and they listen, very easy, and they say, okay, let's try it. Just because we are inside, nothing changed. So probably,
get in.
It should be done for instance, or just wait, because also these kind of things, as are there done in many places that start becoming probably, or we hope this is our hypothesis, a standard. And then people understand that it's not really a threat, it's not really a problem, and they can get a hype and they try to use it by themselves.
Even for international, because like it's something beyond a national level. And obviously I can't be a Spanish politician, nor a Dutch politician, nor an English politician, because look at me. It's a mess.
What?
Like, I am not convincing in any of those settings.
I think that the level is not so problematic.
Okay, no, you cannot never, ever repeat this sentence ever again.
But there are people in the middle. There are people in between countries.
There are two different things. So one is you would be a perfect politician in any of these countries, or in all. And yes, there are some institutional problems because you need a passport or you need to have a working permit or living here for certain years to participate in the democracy process, right? In the way we do it now, in the representative democracy kind. Okay. The other one is, of course, the most relevant one. What do people do with your situation? You say, I'm a citizen of the world, actually, and the places I want influence because I have a say. I want to decide. I want to have a say in the development of that area, but I'm not an official citizen of that area. How can we do something about that? That's the fundamental question. It's a really very fundamental philosophical question, I would say. Why do you have to be a citizen?
I think there's a third question in there, and that's just the question: if I'm outside, if I'm outside and I'm trying to convince people that I have a good idea, how do I do that?
Yes.
Especially when it takes away some of their institutionalized power.
Yes.
So that's even, I think,
separate
and
the
from
fourth,
the.
Now, yeah, it is just a question. By the way, I'm half Dutch, half Italian. Grew up in Brazil, so I know the problem. But the question is actually, is it important to try to participate in a place where you don't live? I believe very much that participation is important when you can influence actually the place where you live. And of course, it's nice to be on vacation some other place and give advice how they should do. But I mean, you live in one place. You
think that inhabitants are that is the criterion.
I mean, I don't know if it's a criteria. For me, it's important to be able to.
That's the civil servant now.
Yeah,
he's running.
I mean, I do believe in participation when you can engage to the community where you're living, the neighborhood.
Okay, but so thank you for that perspective. But what are the answers to the questions?
Well, I think this is what I try to do in my day job: make ideas that some people or some municipalities think of bigger and grow. And it's. I've been thinking about this because this was the question I was supposed to answer here, and I don't really have an answer. Sorry, but I do have a start of an answer. And I think the start of the answer is ownership. And find more people who are willing to share ownership with you and share ownership with them.
You know who that is? You wouldn't believe it. The corporates.
Yeah. Well,
they are so keen to get on board.
Yeah, but
it's scary.
Yeah, I know, but it's
intimidating.
Hey, have you read the charter from Facebook? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg wants us all to live on Facebook when we go digital and never ever leave it. I mean, I truly believe, but it's, I think, a tangent here, that there is a conflict going on between democracy and corporations, and who are going to run us as people. We might be on that. We might not be inside-outside government mode, but we might be. Are we willing to pay for everything, or pay with our data, or are we willing to govern ourselves or each other? But that's kind of a different. But ownership is important, and I run a program for municipalities to grow stuff. So my main clients are the municipalities. Sorry, the enemy here. But we of course did it with a digital tool. We have a website, and everybody can post ideas there. Everybody. And municipalities can say, hey, I like this idea, and they can join. And I help, because that's what you do. You don't just put on something on the internet, you help. You're a civil servant, we help. We have meetings around digital identities. And then we call all our contacts who are interested in the last e-democracy tool and say, hey, come and listen to this one. So this is what you do. you create a movement, and sometimes you need help when you're starting. But I think you don't really have to take over to be heard. I hope.
No.
I hope.
I'm not saying that is the only solution, but try to convince them. I think it's
but
sometimes
in the core you're saying the same. You need to be the owner. You need to let the owners listen, but sometimes you can grow ownership.
I think we should look somewhat more optimistic to the problem on the table, because let me give an example for myself. I studied political science in the city of Amsterdam, and I started in the year, I'm a senior citizen, in 1966. And at that time in the Netherlands, there was lots of anger about the political system, and so a number of people, and I was one of them, started a new political party, Democracy 66, which is now one of the main parties in the Netherlands after 50 years. So at that time, there were students or people who said, well, we should change things, and we started a new party. Later on, I became a politician, and I was dissatisfied with my citizens because they were too passive.
We are getting really on the wrong side of
the that was in the city of Leiden, and at that time, I think it's the 1990s, the beginning of the 1990s, in Amsterdam, there was the system, the digital city. Yes. The Waag Society is one of the offsprings of it. So lots of people who were interested in the same idea said, well, we don't want the old politics, the representative system, we want new democracy. We started all kinds of projects. Maluki was one of them too.
Was he a project?
He was in a project. We started many experiments, and he was a project as such also, because at that time he was involved in very new things. The result was that changes became real. We started digital consultation, and there were all kinds of experiments. The people who were involved in that movement, I think it's the first wave of experiments. Now we have the second or maybe the third, where we try to develop and renew projects, for instance, on the municipal level, to a higher level. It can be national. I think on the national level, and I can speak for the Netherlands and also for other European countries, there is lots of projects in which give people the possibility to be engaged. Really? Platforms, yes, there are. And not too many people use them. And so the question is, should we do things in a digital way, and does it improve because it's digital, or should we make politics more interesting? And that means also that people should take the time to be involved. So as a politician, I invite people in the room, not people in the room because they are interested in the topic, but people outside the room to be involved.
But it sounds like you say, when I started to become a politician, I was unhappy with my citizens, and you say, and I still am.
Because they said, well, we have elected you.
I'm still unhappy with my citizens, my fellow citizens at the moment, because they should participate more. All the opportunities are there. Why aren't they doing it?
There are many more possibilities than people say. And the dissatisfaction by me was that people say, well, we have elected you for 4 years, so come back after 4 years.
You say people are so used, and so maybe in the representative democracy, I chose you to decide for me, so I'm not going to bother. You are still a bit unsatisfied with citizens.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's an interesting thing, because you said, let's make this much more optimistic. Yes. And that was your beginning of your intervention.
So,
thank you for that. For that.
And what is the response from the hall?
Yeah, it's a good way. I think it's the bridge. It's going to be the bridge discussion to the innovation of government, because I would say, well, perhaps why is okay? First. No. Do you agree with this position from Matt?
Not at all. Not at all. At all.
Let's start with that.
People are quite intelligent and they know what they want to do. And if you offer them participation opportunities that they don't consider like interesting opportunities, they don't participate.
Yeah. So
the first participatory budget that we did, the first one we did, I was playing this morning in another meeting, 0 marketing campaign, 0 media campaign. We just made a press conference the first day saying, it's open, you can now decide over 60 million euros. That's it. And 50,000 people came and joined the platform and participated. It's not because we forced them or we have to educate them or whatever. It's because they understood that participation mechanism. We like it. It's real. And it was very important. It was binding also. They were not proposing ideas. They were taking decisions. And they came by themselves.
Political science would back the differ and say something like, if people really have the idea they have power with their decision, they will show up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but people have power. For instance, let's give you an example in the Netherlands. The law makes it possible for parents, if they're dissatisfied with the local schools, to start their own school. So what did I do? I was, when I was young, I was on a Montessori school. And in my city, at the same time as I was alderman, the city council wanted to decide that the one Montessori school was still there, should close because they didn't want to fund it anymore. A number of parents, and I was a parent at that time too, started their own school. They got funding and they created their own school, and it became one of the best schools in town. So if you take the possibilities, don't wait for government or politicians to offer you a platform. Start your own invention. Start your own political party. Make groups.
Okay, we're going to continue. So he's still repeating. It's all possible. These people
Everything is possible.
So all these schools are there. And there were just bored citizens who do not show up, but they should and they can.
I'm doing that. And I'm being chased out of the room. Really, really. I can show you some emails which are...
I'm provoking, not you as a person.
No, but I'm a citizen. I am. Yeah. That's exactly what I am.
But find some other people in the same position or have likewise ideas and start to knock on the door.
Matt, what did you want to say?
No, the only thing that I want to say that, of course, people have the opportunity to participate, and if they have the opportunity, perhaps part of them do. But I really do believe that you have to protect the system. He just told me actually that they were participating, and after their election, that right has been taken away. So if you have a system that safeguards his right in spite of elections of other politicians, he will be much more motivated to participate.
Paola,
it's his right.
Yeah, Paola, so would you say that we have to follow the example of Brazil and make it into a law?
I mean, you cannot just copy from Brazil to the Netherlands, but I really convinced that many of the instruments that the law in Brazil has, we should give a chance in the Netherlands to try to translate that to the Dutch situation.
If I may, we have just learned from you. We have learned budget monitoring based on human rights from INESC, from Jara Pietrowski. And I think this internationalization we have at this moment make very possible to learn from all over part of the world what can work as citizen-driven participation.
And not only the citizens, not only the citizens, but what I learned from my research is that the government in Brazil just took another attitude. He didn't say you can participate and you organize. No, we're gonna take our responsibility to make possible that you participate and that you have the right to keep doing that. Yes. So that is a very essential aspect that you have to protect the right of citizens to participate, and it needs a system.
Yes.
So
it's not enough to have a good idea.
The other point is the right not to participate. We have this exchange, dialogue in Amsterdam East, and some people, clearly also from middle class, no problem, we can arrange everything for themselves and families, say we want also to have the right to participate if we want, but if we do not want to participate in the budget monitoring, let's us free. And this is also democracy. So the system should authorize full participation, but also full withdrawal without consequence from the participation.
Please.
I actually liked where you guys were going.
So continue the conversation.
Okay,
so try to continue.
Sure, well, and that's good because my question has to do with that. My name's Stephen. I'm a master's student studying urban studies and looking at urban experiments and what they have to do with democracy and urban governance. And my two-sided question, and it's good because it kind of critiques and pokes at both of the sort of dialogues that are going here. The one is that a lot of these platforms we're talking about are often electronic platforms, internet platforms, and my concern is, I mean, not me personally, I can work on the internet and a computer fine. I have a computer.
You're worried about lower skilled
but
people?
Yeah, exactly, lower skilled people, or people, seniors that aren't tech savvy, people that don't, are low income, you know.
Yeah.
Their participatory aspect on it. And then the other hand is also the people that, if I think, I'm Canadian, and I also I'm neighbor to the United States, they have it even worse, where some people literally cannot participate in these things because they're working from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. They have kids, and they can't afford to actually participate. So where do these limitations kind of go into the whole thing for you?
I fully agree with you that everything which is available as a channel should be multi-channel. So from the very start, we should not talk about digital democracy. It's just democracy in a new way, using digital techniques where possible, and when people are able to use them. But some people are not, or are not willing to do so. Young people nowadays think that old people cannot use the new techniques. Young people will become old, and then they cannot use the new techniques in the future. So there's always a group of people who lag behind. Okay. So there should be a facility to use it in multi-channels.
How do you do it in Madrid?
In Madrid, we have the platform, but we have also some offices for the city council where people can go to participate and without touching a computer. Almost nobody goes there. So it's to solve the digital divide, but we don't see this digital divide affecting so much. So sometimes I think this digital divide problem is not
created
so,
as a critique.
Yeah, it's not, and it's really used always against the kind of direct democracy mechanism. I'm not saying that you are proposing this argument, but the opposition, the people don't like this kind of things. They always propose it like, yeah, but it's the digital divide, and we have to explain it that without these digital tools, there is a larger divide, that is, people cannot participate in any way, because if you need to go physically to some place, almost nobody can go. And that never happens. So it's to solve another divide. The participation divide is solved first with digital tools, and then you have to solve the digital divide with other means. But you have to check.
It's two things. One is, I totally agree with you that we are using illegal yes buts. So we're using privacy, and we're using this kind of digital to not do something. We're really, really good at that.
You're calling it illegal?
Yes, because we don't really want to. We don't really care about if people are digitally not able. We just don't want to do it. Yeah. We don't really care about our privacy. We just don't want to do it online. So that's the first. I agree with you. We should be much more clear in our discussion and poke at the question, at the behind the question, because I think it's we do yes but too much. But I'm sorry, I was totally agreeing with you that there is not such a problem. But then my organization just did a research, and 25% of people in the Netherlands cannot solve their own things that they need to do with our government digitally alone. So.
But it's not the digital divide, right? It's just the complexity of forms.
It is a combination of the digital and the complexity.
Exactly.
So so
because they can send an email and they can Skype with their children.
Yes, and they can't. It's complex, and we really don't know how to solve it yet because it's so complex. It's not only
the digital in nature.
It's not
complexity.
Exactly. It's both. It's digitally complexity. It's a very what we call wicked problem.
If 40% of the children finishes their basic schooling with not enough literacy, which is the case in the Netherlands at the moment, of course it's going to pose a problem.
Maybe a few points. It's important to recognize the very existence of vulnerable groups. I was the chair of tenants work group in social housing. I was the only one with a computer. So there is a point of infrastructure. It's a public function to make sure that everyone has a computer and access to internet, cheap internet. The second point is learning to work with internet. It's learning. For myself, as a social worker, at the beginning of this century, I developed a method for elderly migrants on the digital highway, especially for social cultural work, for people, for vulnerable groups in neighborhood houses to learn to work with internet and computer. And there are many other groups. Another point, think of people with disability. I was also chair of a local VMORAD, it's a kind of council about social questions, and we were very critical about the website of the municipality of Amsterdam, because if you are blind, you cannot use it easily. So you have to make sure it's called without zonder drempel, without
accessibility. Accessibility
thing. The other point is internet makes the following possible. You can participate independently of time and space, and it's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you were saying. I mean, you're solving actually a participation hurdle with the digitalization.
Yeah, it's like you have another better way.
Yes.
Not then let's start like this. It's like if when printing press was invented, people say, no, the paper divide, you know, it's difficult, some people cannot read, and so, okay, but it's the start. We start with this, and then we will make it better.
I want to go to the innovation of the government, but let's see if there's still people. There are two people there standing who want to say something about participation of citizens.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Sarah. I want to ask a bit of a different question, which is the other way around. So let's assume that the share of the population that actually participate is fair, so it takes a fair share of the society, including the classes and different type of education and ethnic groups. So do you think, where do you draw the line? Where do you think like direct democracy should not have a say? I mean,
when do you think that direct democracy mechanism of participatory mechanisms are not democratic anymore because they're not okay?
So like for example,
a clear question.
Yes, because I mean, in theory is good. It's also romantic, but in practical fact, for example, do you think it's fair that citizens should have a say, like in foreign policies, or like very important matters?
Going to war.
Yes.
Okay.
I would be a bit scared to have to give this power, because this. A decision made by citizens could be also influenced by the right moment, and so it could be something like, it could be vulnerable.
Yes, but we did see that the other way of democracy kind of gives up.
Have you followed a little bit how America and England decided to go to war to Iraq?
Yeah, but if you
And Spain, we were also.
Yeah.
We were also.
Sorry.
90% of the population against the war. And the president said, no, we should go to war. And we went also.
For example, Brexit, and the day after people Googling what is
what
no,
is
no, 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 no.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I'm mocking you, but I shouldn't, because they are really good questions. It's a very common critique in the Netherlands. It's lots of times used for a death penalty discussion. If we would do a referendum on that, we would be having a death penalty. So there's the critique on what kind of questions do you pose in a direct democracy, because people can be influenced by others than rationale or something. And the other one is there something to say about the representativeness of these participatory or direct democracy mechanisms? Who wants to? You already were like.
Because no, this is the kind of thing that we always.
Okay, so but there are common critiques, and so respond seriously, please.
If the people are not taking a decision, the politicians are taking a decision. The politicians, as we clearly see, are not expert on anything. And it's much more easy, and it is clear, I understand they are not expert, no? They are not there because they are better in something, they have more knowledge or anything. It's totally usually the opposite, but it's something that has nothing to do with the good way to take decisions. To influence a politician is much more easier than to influence a lot of people. The kind of influence to a politician, you just have to have a meeting with him or give him a bit of money or whatever, and you produce these kind of things. And we have thousands and thousands and thousands of examples of this, that this kind of decision, not going for the public benefit, but for the benefit of somebody or stupid decision
You're okay.
just because somebody made the politician do it. With this kind of large-scale process, it's not perfect, you cannot solve it, but it's much more difficult to have this kind of influence. So in general, you have to give the important decisions to the people. The kind of process like the Brexit is a very bad example of a participation process, because first, the problem was not selected by the people. It's not the people who decided we should vote on the Brexit. Maybe they thought that the important thing to vote was not on Brexit, was on a lot of different things.
But Cameron
The
was
solutions.
elected, and in the agenda there was a referendum.
But
So
no, but you vote for a lot of things. They didn't choose this idea as to be voted. So the problem, they didn't select it. The solutions were not also selected or built by the people. From the top down, the politician gave already two close solutions, that probably both of them were very bad. So this is the opposite of an interesting participation process where the things come bottom to top. There are a lot of dictatorship all over the world that do this kind of plebiscitary process, and it has nothing to do with democracy. So this is not a good example. The examples are good when people are deciding topics, the solution, and they take the decision. And this is where things happen good.
Okay, fair point, but it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other.
No, but he says a genuine, a genuine process where a referendum is organized in the right way. The question is been coming from the populations. The solutions where you have to choose between are also co-created with citizens, and there is a good process of informing all the people who want to participate in the process. Then you have a genuine referendum, and you cannot criticize the referendum and then use the example of a Brexit, where he says all the criteria for a good referendum are not in place with that example. So do not use that example to make your point, because the referendum is not a good example. That's what his argumentation.
But that was just an example. I mean, I would be worried in general just because.
But please respond to his critique. He says it's easier to influence a politician than an entire population. So your idea of your fear for direct democracy or referendum, he says, you should fear representative democracy if that is your fear.
Well, I could do, yeah, fair.
Okay.
But also, I think the people that stand at the top also have a lot of power to influence a lot of people.
Okay.
So it's not really necessarily the case that there's one person you influence it, and there is a lot of people you do not.
I think that there's a key in where you started, that you, in your mind, the people who you elect to be your politician are worse at it than you are. And I think that's the main difference between direct democracy and the other, I forget the, yes, thank you. When I go to the hairdresser and she asks me, or he asks me, how do you want your hair cut? I say, well, I didn't really go to hairdressing school. Make me look as good as I can. You're better at it than I am. So if I trust that the people who are governing me are better at it than I am, because they're better, it's a job, it's a function, it takes work, you know that. Then I'm willing to trust them better than I'm willing to trust myself and my better self. If I don't trust them,
the risk of this system, this is not the idea. I mean, the problem is everybody's standing down. I get like, but then I'm like, 4, 3. Do you really want to? Okay, come. Yeah, because we really want to have a conversation with the person there, but then I have like 6 conversation in your please.
No, it's really about being part of this conversation.
Okay.
I find it really problematic.
Marianne.
Let's just call Anna. I don't remember your name. Sorry.
Marianne.
No, Marianne and
Matt.
Oh, sorry.
Of course, I mean, from your own experience, you can always define everything, but it's really problematic for me to hear that, yes, of course, we have democracy, that we have the institutions, and some people may not use them, maybe because they're lazy or because they're not interested, blah, blah. I'm Mexican, I should have said that earlier.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Fully Mexican. And I'm part of an organization called the SMX Collective. We work, first off, I'm a human geographer, but I'm also an activist, and we work around issues of human rights, from the Netherlands, by the way. But the whole point is about 2 challenges that I see to democracy in any flavor. And that is the digital society, the digital citizenship, but also the global citizenship, which I don't think we have faced them before. And I think that's problematic, and it goes to your points of the things are there, but people don't use it. Me as a Mexican, maybe you read the newspaper yesterday, the Guardian or the New York Times, the Mexican government is actually spying on journalists and human rights activists. So for me, before I go into working in anything about democracy, I have to be sure that I'm using a very sounded and solid way of protecting my identity. Because I know I'm being surveilled by the Mexican government, but also here in the Netherlands, the Dutch have actually a much more strict system of surveillance here, but nobody speaks about that. And that's a challenge in terms of the platforms, the digital platforms that will allow people to actually participate. And that links to the other person that was saying about what do you say, what you don't say, because of course there are risks in saying what you shouldn't say according to the people that are in power. And the other one about global citizenship, which for me is much more interesting. For example, when it comes to think about Donald Trump, shouldn't we all be able to vote when the US elections come? I mean, we're all affected by what's going on there, but we cannot actually vote, and we don't have a mechanism to vote into that. So for me, those are more or less the challenges of democracy, the global citizenship, but also the digital citizenship. And that would be interesting also to hear.
Who wants to respond at the table to the two challenges?
It's a bit above our level.
So the first is really fundamental in digital, safety and privacy and surveillance on the one hand, and then the open tool where you are completely naked, present in the digital form. So how do you...
I totally agree with this first problem. I think it's really a problem. It's not solved at all. We are trying to use cryptography mechanism to not let the government to know what you voted. We still are experimenting, and it's a very early phase. And things like blockchain and these kind of things, I think this is the way to go, but still not a clear solution at all. And more about this global decision and these kind of things, I think probably, or idea a bit vague, is that will come also with a bit of time. That when people get used, also connecting with this other thing of different levels of decision, when people get used to vote in a regular way about their local issues, then they will say, okay, and then I should vote also for national issues because there's no difference. And then probably it will be easier also to jump over borders and start taking decisions that affect us all globally. But probably it will come because of the change of how people think that they should interact with the government.
Yeah. Well, we should have an evening about global citizenship, but it's a bit of a big issue, right, to deal with at the table right now. I'm going to allow you, one of the people who wanted to say something is seated down again. He thinks, this takes too long. But please.
So, I want to ask you a real question.
Yeah.
Not like this one. Finally, we come to the real question.
Well, we will give you a real answer.
There's a lot of hypothetical, but in our K-zone in Southeast, we are in a real struggle. We are really doing the experiment.
Lots of people in the room can say the same thing.
Lots of people are doing it. So this is why I came here to see if you have real advice for a real life situation that's happening. We have started, it seems there is like a balance, democracy and organization. These things go hand in hand. If you have democracy, you need to organize. We are actually starting at the other end. The K-zone in the neighborhood, in the Bijlmer, is an area with lots of projects, large flats. And so what we're trying to do as an experiment is to organize, self-organize every flat with a good committee out of the inhabitants. And so if we call it 100% degree organization. We want to go to 100% degree organization of our neighborhood. Every flat, every living community, well organized. And then that we can tie together. And now we have a way to reach people and to move up things. But it seems that this is, on one hand, it needs money, for example. Because many people in our neighborhood, they work 3 jobs, they have no time, they're very willing, like you say, to do things, but they need a little bit of space, because otherwise you always get the same people. So we have approached local government, we've approached Laurens Evans, everybody says, great idea, go and do it, goodbye. And so how do you implement an idea, how do you get from the experimental stage, because that's, I think,
Yes.
the whole discussion, to a more structural...
Should there be funds available to organize participation? That is the question.
Yes, so there's something like room for initiative in this city.
Yes.
And politically it was not possible to do it, etc. So we're at a loss how to...
No, that's very good. So what is the experience in other countries? So is there budget to organize participation?
In Brazil, 3% of the budget of the municipality has to be used to implement projects of civilians.
And they choose themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Participatory budgeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is a whole system that the people decide which project, they vote for the project that has to be implemented.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's not the same question. That is money for projects. And the question is should there be people who are helping organizing people to participate?
Yeah.
The old opbouwwerker, the social work, the people like that. Should there be budget if you really want participation to actually create that? What is your perspective on that?
Don't know.
You
Really
don't know.
No.
You don't need it.
We are not really facing that problem at the moment. We are more facing the problem of taking the government and put it backward. So
maybe a tip.
I don't have an answer really.
There is at this moment it seems that 8 out of the 400 Dutch municipality have decided to introduce as a community right the right to money to be supported in a citizen initiative. So if you are interested, I can put you in contact with those municipality.
The right to?
It's a community right. It's the right to be supported.
Yes.
It's one of the
locality rights.
Yes, and it's just a Dutch tenants, a Dutch citizen association, LSA Bewoners, has made a map of what is going on around community right to challenge, right to build in the Netherlands, and it seems that in 8 municipalities there is some experiments. You could look beyond the experiment over there.
Okay,
I can
connect with you.
put you.
Yeah. And also thank you very much, because I think the whole table, I think it really strengthens us. We don't want a government that involves us. We want a government that serves us, and it really seems that that's going that way. So thank you very much.
Good. Good. And now we're going to go to innovating that governance. You are now watching your telephone, or do you want to go to the?
No. I still.
Did you still want to? Okay. Because let's use the last 20 minutes of this evening. We've already touched upon many aspects of the innovating the government, right? Of course, you guys are actually trying to do that. Let's say, willing to innovate is, for instance, the Dutch government, according to you?
That's very diverse, as everything is in a Dutch government. We've done research, and based on a very, very bad operationalization of willingness to innovate, because you can try to measure that in a trillion ways, and you will get different results. But we just looked at how often they do participate in innovative ideas, and then you see that there's a really, really classical division, which is the innovation curve. So we have about 50 municipalities who are really, really active. We have about 200, because there's also
400.
378 or 87. I should know. Yeah, I know. It gets less. We have the. I know. Yeah. So you have about 250. Let's add it in the middle, who are doing something, and you have only 50 who really don't participate. Well, we don't know. They don't participate in innovative ideas of others.
Yes.
They could be incredibly innovative in themselves. So it's. I have to be clear. This is how we measured it.
In this, just face this. Would you say it's about the same? I mean, there are some people or some organizations are really into it. Some do nothing, and the rest is a bit,
Yeah, this
It's,
is usually the case.
recognized.
It's a very classical.
Classical. Okay, so let's not talk about that too long. In this series, New Democracy, we always try to look at we call it the principles that give us direction, right? I mean, so what kind of mechanisms we should have in place? What kind of principles in the design of processes should we have to ensure innovation and to ensure that it sustains? I mean, you said of course, we cannot look at Brazil and copy.
No.
Great, but
Yeah.
copy and paste it.
No,
But we can learn from that and make it into a law in some kind of illegal framework would be a wise idea, right? I mean, to protect the what's it called, the whim of the day. What kind of mechanisms of principles would you like to introduce to do this?
I believe that the first thing that we have to realize that many times we talk about participation as being the mean to take the role of government over. In Brazil, at least from this law, participation is a mean to collaboration.
Yes.
So actually, you collaborate with the government. It's not taking over the role of the government, but
Yes.
you work together. Because I do really believe that when you give the voice to the ones that will benefit of the implementation of projects, then you create innovation.
Yes.
So it's not, what I said, just not taking over from the government, but the tools allowed people to gather with the government to participate, to innovate.
Yeah,
And if I
Christian Jone would say for every real innovation you need 5 groups at the table, the government,
exactly.
so the businesses, the academics, the organized citizen and the unorganized citizen. You need those at the table to have innovation.
And you know, my daily work is the energy transition, everything related also to climate change. And I said, if we could manage to have this participation of citizens collaborating with governments, we will be able to upscale the solutions that we really need to implement. We have actually a very short time to get this energy transition done. And it's not only the role of the government, you talk about ownership, that's also each of us has to solve the problem.
Yes.
The Dutch e-participation program started with a e-citizen charter. And we said, well, first of all, we are trying to get a new relationship between citizen and government. We have the traditional relationship, the old democracy or the representative democracy with elections and so on. We're trying to create a new form of democracy. So then we need kind of new rules of engagement. How are we dealing with one another? So the first, it's 10 principles, like the 10 commandments on the new democracy. And the first principle is multi-channel. So for the time being, and also because there are many people who cannot use the new techniques, and new techniques are coming every time, we should be able to serve everyone. Accessibility is the main thing, because everything nice, if you can't open the door, you won't know what's in the room. So first principle is multi-channel. Then there are a number of principles relating to relating to transparency. So it's possible to give all kinds of information, digital, but the lots of information you find on the internet doesn't help you. So information should be personalized. I should be able to know what are my rights, what are my duties. In which case, I'm a parent, I'm a driver, I'm a house owner. I'm supposed to know the law, but nobody knows the law. I want to know what the law means for me in this situation. So we should use the possibilities of digital information, personalized. Then there are a number of principles about transaction. Make it easy. Make it make it also relating to the situation. And the final principle is probably the most important for e-democracy. Government should support e-democracy. So there should be experiments. There should be help for people who want to change government. So there should be a minister or on the local level, a mayor who is responsible for changing the system. So changing the system. and
And
selecting.
you believe within the systems.
You need someone who is trying to find the system from within, helping those who knock on the door and are not heard. And you can there should be someone who helps, and also money should be there, training and so on. So if we want to change and want to make experiments, real life, new ways of dealing, we need those charter of rights, of principles, and adopted and obligatory. That's more than the law says that I should be heard. It should also make it possible for me to be heard.
Yes. Yeah. So only having a legal opportunity if the praxis is not there, that it means the legal thing is empty. Yes.
The problem is all our solutions are working sometimes. And that's the wickedness of this problem. So sometimes you need to take over because the government's not going to listen. Sometimes you need a law, and sometimes you need somebody who helps. But I am somebody who helps, and I don't always get it done. I run into just as many walls, and some of the innovations I support grow big and strong, and some fall. And I really believe in those innovations. So I think it's.
So you're the eternal change manager.
Yeah, or I don't know, but I don't think there's one solution. I just think you should keep talking about that you want this change, you want to go there. And
but what do you need for that? What is the designing principle to create that mechanism?
I have two. Yeah. Only from my experience as growing those things. The first I already said about is ownership, and ownership changes because the people who make the innovation, when it's done, they have their. So you need new owners. The woman who was talking, she made this perfect, but she needs new owners. So that's one. And the other thing is, and that goes into the law stuff, there's also a principle you need to stay away from the going concern in the beginning, because otherwise you don't get the innovation. So you have to stay away from everything that's regular and normal in the beginning, but you need a little line, because to grow it needs to somehow fit into. You know what I mean? If I translate it to my work, somebody makes this new perfect digital tool for e-voting for our 2018. And it's great and it's perfect. And they made it in a small basement, and that's where you should do those things. But then they bring it to our Ministry of BSK, and they say, no way. Because it's too dangerous, too far away. And that's also because it totally doesn't fit the system that we have. Okay. So even though you should invent things in a basement, you should have friends who know about the rules.
Connectors.
Yes. And who can say, disregard this once because we can change that. Okay. But don't disregard this one because then it will never grow.
Fitters in the system advice.
Okay. Yes, you need that.
Looking. Principles.
It helps. Based on my practical experience, what you need is what everyone has said, but I should say an alliance within a niche like Amsterdam East. I explained why it was possible to do it, and an alliance between people, having knowledge of the neighborhood, the citizen. People having knowledge of policy, civil servants, politicians, people having knowledge of e-tools, like ICT, TechNet. And then you can, I think, at given moments, sometimes, you can make a difference. You will have to have a vision, I should say, you will have to develop a theory of change. What is, within this alliance, the impact we want to have in the outcome. How do we want to see our neighborhood about 5, 10, or 20 years? And how are we going to work to reach this impact through which outcomes? And what we are doing, your priorities or budget monitoring or anyway, does it match? Are we able to reach this impact on the basis of those tools? Okay. Alliance in a niche.
For us, the main idea in order to develop tools, mechanisms, whatever, is a bit to think on the effects on the tool, not on the tool, the structure or whatever.
What principles do you need for innovation in governments to sustain, to be sustainable, to not only have experiments, but to have it like in a permanent, serious state?
So the thing is, the effects. It's like what is coming out for the mechanism that I'm setting is like when we check the proposal system.
Why do we
like
do it?
no what we do it, that what is happening when we put it in work, like for example with the decision mechanism. Are people taking important decisions? No, then get out. Another. Are people taking decisions by themselves even if the government don't want to take the decision?
And the mechanism is then that you constantly check whether the effect you wanted
it makes sense in the important, in the really key things, like it's making an impact, or is something aesthetic and then nobody cares and nobody is involved in the mechanism. And then like try to focus always on that to be able to understand what you have to build to produce it.
It's a constant review of mechanisms. Okay, so we have the collaboration, we have the entire charter focusing on actually being able to doing the things you have a right to be able to participate in a substantial, meaningful matter. You have you of course brought the lines in. I mean, there should be a connection between the system as is and the new things. You said, I want the alliance, and who really knows what's going on in the group, and who also share a vision on what you want to achieve in 20 years. And then sometimes a politician goes and goes, but you're still there. And you said, okay, what you need is a mechanism to always review whether what you actually decided you wanted to have an effect really is still going on, and otherwise you should change the mechanism. Okay, so we have these principles now for, it's kind of interesting already, I think. Collaboration, alliance, it's matching. It's starting to be something in my head, but please.
Yeah.
What do you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the group, or to add, up to what extent the execution of policies should be participative.
Yes, not only the decision making, but also doing something.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because you can opinionate about riding bicycles,
and then he says,
but you can only in a sensible way talk about riding bicycles if you did it, actually. So I think civilians should be involved in executing policies.
That's
and
interesting,
all
because
the dirt and the details that come out of the execution of policies. Only in that way civilians can talk about.
If you complain about collecting garbage, please go first help collecting garbage and then complain or have a say about it. Okay.
Sort of like that. Yeah.
Sort of. Because that was funny. I mean, the gentleman from the Kabuurt who was complaining about his civil servants or the organization, you said no. Well, it's exactly the same. I mean, either the mayor takes the decision or the citizens, and then the civil servants, they just execute. But this gentleman says, maybe citizens should be also participating in the execution of policies.
With our participatory budget, we are trying to do it in some sense. We are doing meetings between the people who are going to execute the thing and the people from the neighborhood.
But more
to
principles.
try to have
it's more, thank
not
you.
to execute it, but at least to share ideas and to exchange. But in general, for us, this is not really the key thing that we have to change. It's more the decision itself comes from a problematic source that has nothing to do with the people. It's not well designed. It's just
Please. Yeah, you can.
Well, I think there should not only be a right to participate, but there should also be a duty to participate. I think that every citizen in a city should be able, like a jury member. And we have systems like that. We have ex-friends.
Yeah. Sir, you were the only one who was giving that an applause. Please.
Together with my colleague as well. Well, if you look at politics in the 19th century, a citizen was a political citizen. He was involved in politics. That was the 19th century. Now we're looking at the 21st century. My conception, what could be done? First of all, you need ownership. You need to have a certain kind of perception that what you propose really matters in your own life. So what you're doing actually works. Then they become active citizens. It's exactly what he wants, and that he actually proposed. But then the second rule should be, there should be a link, not between the government and the citizen, between politicians and the citizens. This is why we elect politicians. I'm in favor of elected politicians, but also inactive citizens. The third one is that governments should define, as Wim Dirksen once said in a very nice paper, we have 3 levels of participation. Sometimes we have to decide that the politicians decide for us, because it is a difficult matter. Sometimes we decide, we are politicians, but we do it in collaboration with the population. If I'm in gaming, in serious gaming, I make games. I make crowdfunding and crowdsourcing solutions. And sometimes the scientists have to decide which of these inventions are really and truly valid to apply, because they are scientists. They know how to rule the game. The third one is you have participation in which you say, citizens, you can decide what you want to do yourself. It's your job to do. 3 levels, so 3 rules.
Yeah.
1.
And you don't have to, you were very brief, you don't have to recapture it. Thanks.
3 levels of
yes.
activities.
Thanks. Response?
No, I agree. It's a good,
agree?
nice
Oh,
idea.
wow.
The only thing is the citizen themselves who have to choose always the level.
Yes.
I mean,
Not the
anytime they should be able to decide this decision.
guys,
I'm taking the decision.
Okay, I'm gonna. I mean,
Is the only thing, not the politician.
Okay.
But the levels are okay. Sometimes we delegate the power,
Very
of course.
You say, the citizens should decide if the politician should take the decision by themselves.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay.
That's a debate.
Almost.
Okay. So I don't have to look in this. I look at this side and I don't look at this side. So we have come up with some principles on how you can actually get innovation to be sustained in a government. Is there a principle missing? Yeah, it would be great if you would do that. I like that. No, but you're perfectly able. I can see that.
Well, in Dutch, in Holland, you have to be an expert. We have the right to talk. So I'm not. The innovation that I would find very essential at this point, that the democracy is in a big jam in the world. It's in a decay. I wish that the government wouldn't stay for 4 years. Like the rigid, it's very rigid. 4 years, we had a nice government. They stayed for 4 years. It was unbelievable in Nederland that the government didn't fall. They were good at their jobs, but they had to go. And now we're in a very big mess, because nobody wants to take the government. Nobody wants to sit at the government. So it's a pity that it had to go after 4 years. Really.
So you say
I say let's take a vote. Are you happy with after 4 years? Are you happy with what we did? Can we go on?
But you know that's what we do actually in elections. and then because the ruling party was sliced.
Yeah, it was.
Ja, sorry PvdA-huis. Het was gewoon afgelopen. Ja.
Yeah, but it's a pity that a few ministers have to go.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you say you think you say it's the wrong question posed at elections. That's what you are saying. Why is it? Is that your suggestion?
People are very tired of voting.
Okay.
Voting for this, voting for that.
Okay.
In France, they voted 2, 3. They voted all the time.
Thanks.
I'm tired of voting. I said I have to vote again.
Okay.
And perhaps we'll have to vote again because they don't seem to be able to find a government, to find a coalition.
Thank you.
And the principle of democracy is rigid.
Yes, thank you.
Just to finish my point is, if you're happy about something, why change it?
Okay.
It could go on like Pericles reigned for 30 years because
Yes.
he was good.
And
somebody
who's
is
our
good.
Pericles? Is that Lodewijk Asscher or is it Dijsselbloem? I mean, is it possible?
What do you mean?
Do we? Okay. it's of course it's a very strange. So what do you propose? That's my question.
Yeah, it's rigid. So I mean, it has to be opened because, like Pericles, who invented it. I mean, we do want this democracy to be global. It's the best regime everybody finds to make people live together.
It's fine.
So,
thanks.
I mean, just open it.
Thank you. Yeah, people are tired of voting. I remember this sentence, and it's interesting because sometimes I think you're right, and you see it also in turnouts in France now.
People are tired of voting to choose people, but not to vote as if you.
Exactly.
They can vote on the budget, on decisions. They're happy with it. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The voting as it is today. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, panel. It's 7 minutes. No. 7 minutes. Oh, past, no, not even, I think. Past 10 at 9:30. I want to ask the people who were so kind to stay, because some of the people we're going to talk to them now. Who were drinking a beer at the terrace, of course, I can imagine. Thank you for staying here, but also give our panel a big thank you for participating. Thank you for coming from all the way from Madrid to inspire us, and hopefully wise things will happen if these participatory mechanisms are available to municipalities. They will use them. Citizens will use them, and I mean the lesson of today, dear audience, with 40 people sleeping in a square. Yes. You can actually take over government. Thank you very much. Thank you.